So this will be a fun panel because we all know each other pretty well. So Renee has been a long-time friend. She's used to be an investor at OATV. She's currently running BD at a very cool company called Haven, and she's also a very active angel investor. And then my friend Jonathan is from Michigan, but is here more than a lot of other people, and so he kind of feels like a local, and he's been seed investing, what now, for 3 years?
We're going on 5, actually.
Great. So I think the way I would kick it off is, let's just assume that anyone who's starting a company has a goal 18, 24, 36 months of getting institutional financing. A large investor writes a big check into the company, $5, $10, $15 million, but you got to start somewhere. Can angel investors, either individuals or very, very small micro funds, actually help guide the entrepreneurs in that path, or are entrepreneurs kind of on their own?
Go ahead.
So I think, make sure my mic's on. I think they can. So I used to invest as an angel independently, and now I invest as an angel through an AngelList syndicate. And my syndicate's focused on hardware and connected devices, because when I was a VC, that was my area of focus. One of the things that we do, even as angels, is we really dig into the company's growth potential. And we're looking a lot at what our check is actually going to do. And there have been times when we've said, it just doesn't seem that if they're asking for an angel check to round out a larger round, we'll say, like, are we really going to get you to your next round? Is there something that we can do here? Is there some reason why we are the right angel for you? And the nice thing about being part of a syndicate is we have a group of people that we tap behind us who actually do help our companies find customers, for example, or are actively kind of active members in the angel communities who have ties to VCs. And so a lot of what we offer as a value add is that ability to connect to the broader community.
Yeah, I would say network obviously is really important, but at the end of the day, the weight really is on the company. If it's not an impressive company and the founders aren't doing everything they can to build the company, no angel's going to be able to put together your next round for you, or even help you for that matter. But if someone is just on the cusp or is past that, I think to have access to a decent network of more capital is something that's very, very important.
But let's push back on that a little bit. It seems like in today's environment where there's a lot of money in the seed and angel round, there's more competition for those rounds, right? And so maybe there's more party rounds. Maybe there's more people who don't have those connections upstream. If you're an entrepreneur today, how do you evaluate that?
It's a good point. The truth is most party rounds, at least from what I've seen, over the past 2-3 years, a lot of the party round companies I've seen have fizzled. And what happens is you get so many big names in there, and none of them have time to talk to the entrepreneurs about anything, good or bad. So while certainly you want some people who have tremendous experience and can open up doors for you and help you with your product, you have to make sure the round is also filled up with enough people who literally will pick up your call when you try to get a hold of them. I've seen the most impressive names, huge stacked lists, and a company has run into some issue, and they can't get a hold of anyone. So I would say you have to make sure that people are accessible. Accessibility is a huge issue.
And I think it's also helpful to have somebody that you think of as your lead, even if it's not a lead in the more traditional price round sense of the word, just having somebody who is going to kind of herd the cats. And I think that's one of the problems with the party round also. You have a lot of people who have maybe kicked in some small amount of money, but don't feel enough of a sense of ownership to drive it forward. And so identifying the person who's going to really be your champion pushing forward into that next round is something that you should be thinking about much the same way as you would when you were choosing your lead for your Series A.
Well, just to push on that a little bit, it does seem like a common refrain we all probably hear from founders is, hey, we've got commitment of X and we're looking for a lead. And what usually ends up happening is a lead ends up costing more in terms of equity, and people don't want to give that up. Is that something where you feel an entrepreneur, if they want to go down the venture path, should think about the cost benefit of a lead versus the dilution associated with it?
I think so, yeah. I definitely appreciate wanting to minimize that dilution, but at the same time, I think that one of your responsibilities when you're choosing your investors is finding the person who, where you're going to get the best value for the price.
Yeah, no, I'd also say outside of value, I've seen time and time again, I've seen companies run this circle where they're trying to find the best price and the least amount of dilution possible, and then interest fades away and they get so caught up in the fundraising process that they don't even develop product. I think the most important thing, find an outfit, some venture arm or someone, an angel, anyone who you feel very confident with, set terms and get moving, get back to product as fast as you can. Just get through the process as fast as you can. You give up a little bit more of the company at the beginning, fine. When you retire and you're a gazillion-dollar company, you won't regret it.
So this is what I call the over-optimization trap. Yeah. I'd love to hear from both of you. Have you encountered founders that are over-optimizing in the fundraising process, and have you seen them eventually get to the intended goal? Have you seen some of them lose deal momentum? Is it kind of split 50-50?
I've definitely seen deals lose momentum because there is a sense when somebody comes back to you 6 months later and says, hey, we're still raising, that's a red flag. And the question for me is why weren't you able to close this round? Was nobody else interested? And if you're coming back to me, that it's kind of a adverse selection problem there where I'm saying, is this really good if no one else would touch it? So I think that it definitely sends a bad signal.
I agree. What happens is you get caught in this situation where you're just afraid to make a decision. I just learned something really interesting, and Google this because I don't know for sure if it's true, but the actual, I nerd out on like the makeup of words and the origin of the word. So the word decide, the last part of decide, side, means to kill something. So, genocide, homicide. And then decide itself, you're killing your options. And making decisions is a very, very difficult thing. What happens is someone has an interesting company, they've got all of this, interest, and then they're stuck. And they just think like, if I wait a little bit longer, I can get a better term here, I can find a new partner there. And I've seen so many deals fizzle and fail completely, who at one time had great partners lined up. I would say just get it done quickly. Find someone you love, close it, give up more of the company because you're about to acquire like a friend for life, hopefully, who's going to be with you for a long time. Get it done.
All right, so let's transition a little bit. Let's say the founding team, they've gotten their angel/seed round done. Okay, great. All the money's in the bank. Do you typically now see the path, I'd be curious in both of your perspectives, is you go from this angel round of, let's say, 500 to $1 million, $1.5 million, and then you're going to the institutional seed investors, let's say around 50 to 100, 125 million, or can they go right to the bigger institutions? And how should a founder think about that in a framework?
All right. So, that all depends on the company. I hate the word traction. It's defined differently for every single company, but it really depends at the end of the day of how well is that company doing. I've seen companies go from a seed round and 6 months later raise a huge A, and that's all based on either really strong traction, whether it's actualized or not, it's to be determined. And I've seen companies the bridge round has become like the famous, it's this new space, and it has this negative connotation towards it. Because like I hear, oh, we're raising a bridge, and I just think, well, look, why didn't you just connect immediately? Like, what was the problem? But in a lot of cases, they're optimizing for price again. And so they're like, well, I know that in 6 months we'll hit this milestone and we can raise at a higher valuation. We go through the whole cycle again. I'm always of the mindset of just find the best partners, give up a little bit more of your company. And we syndicate all of our deals at Ludlow. I'm not leading deals, so I'm not setting terms. I look out for the company's best interests. But at the end of the day, I think if you just are a little, I know I keep harping on this, but if you're a little less piggish and you just focus on finding those best relationships, it always ends up better.
I think in hardware we see, I focus mostly on hardware, and in hardware we see bridges quite a bit. And the reality is, for me, that tells me that you didn't properly price your full cost to manufacture, and that's also a red flag. One thing that I notice as an angel, and just feedback, is I occasionally get pushback from companies when I say I want to see financials, because the expectation is that since I'm investing as an angel, I should just want to invest on the idea alone or on the person alone, and that's not how this works anymore. Maybe that's your friends and family round, but that is not your angel round, particularly not in hardware, where I really expect to see, before I write a check, or before, as a syndicate, as a syndicate leader, I feel a responsibility to the people I'm syndicating that deal to, and I want to feel that I'm pushing them something that I have carefully vetted and validated. So if somebody comes to me and says they're raising a bridge round, that's sort of an uphill. That's already one step where I say, why didn't you raise more to begin with, or what is this really going to get you?
So let's use that example again. Let's say both of you have invested in a separate company. It's been angel, kind of seed funded, a modest amount, and you're working with the company and trying to shepherd them through to the next round. How do you gain more and more confidence in a founder or founding team versus maybe potentially losing confidence, and then when the reference checks come in later, you're kind of in a kind of delicate position?
Honest founders who are comfortable admitting where they fell short. If someone that we've invested in comes and says, listen, Jonathan, like, here are all the things that we told you we were going to do. Here's the whole list of the things we didn't do yet, and which is why we're not at a point to raise our next round. Here's why we think it happened. This is what I want to do. I take full responsibility. Like, I was wrong. I misjudged it. I love when people are just honest and they admit mistake instead of trying to cover up everything with, oh, well, the market didn't time, it was bad timing and this happened and our co-founder, woke up and had to pee for too long.
But how does that impact
when they're? I don't know where that one came from.
But this is actually something I don't think founders in the very early stages realize, is that if you've seed invested in a company and then they go out to talk to a larger institution, if that institution has any bit of interest, they're going to call you.
No, and that's true.
Yeah.
And the weird spot is when we put a first check in. Like, our general philosophy at Ludlow is write a seed stage check, follow that entrepreneur, really help them out, and then come the A, we follow on more capital. So that bridge round, which we don't generally do, it's really awkward when someone comes and says, oh, hey, like, you were one of the first investors. Are you participating in the bridge? What do you recommend? Now, I have every interest to get that investor involved, but at the same time, it's a hard sell when we're not participating. But again, if the entrepreneur is honest and says, this is what we're doing and this is what happened and this is what fell through, I have no problem saying to that other investor, typically we wait till the A, this is all, but they'll be very candid with you as to why they're in this position. When someone says they don't, I say this all the time, when someone says they don't know and they'll find out, that makes me trust that everything else they've said is much more truthful. Saying you don't know the answer, or you'll figure it out, that's a boost of confidence for me. That's not a red flag for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Let's see what else comes up in. I guess have you been in situations where you've been part of a company early and it's gone on to have become a successful or looking at the makings of a successful company, and you initially had a pro rata right, and then maybe that went away?
Yeah, I've experienced it often. What it comes down to is, from our perspective, we love to build strong relationships with the people we invest in. And it sounds trite, and everyone will say it, but like, if we're not best friends with these founders, then we're doing something really, really wrong. And at the end of the day, if we are close with the founders, they'll go to war for us. And so generally, they're getting a lot of pressure from these larger firms to get rid of these rights and to get rid of their earlier investors. And if they really respect what we've done for them and they see that we've added, a lot of meaningful help for them, then they'll say to that person.
Now, will you invest without pro rata rights?
Yeah, I will. If a company's doing well, yes is the short answer.
Yeah,
And,
same here.
and what's your perspective if you were to, now you're on the company building side, how should founders think about allocating pro rata rights? They're in the YC Safe doc, so they're kind of standardized, but it's that Charlie Brown episode where you have a written contract.
Yeah, it is. It's really tough. I think a lot of it comes down to thinking very strategically around what your next needs are and who the investor partner you need for that next stage of growth is, while trying to balance that with being as fair as possible to the people who supported you as early as possible. So it's definitely, being on both sides of the table. I appreciate the kind of careful balancing act that really requires.
Changing gears a little bit, how should early stage founders in the angel stage think about leveraging either broad crowdfunding like AngelList or maybe more verticalized crowdfunding? You have a lot of experience here.
On the equity front or on the straight up capital injection front?
Either.
Okay, so crowdfunding's been really fantastic for hardware. Crowdfunding costs money now, and I think that a lot of people don't realize that when they're about to go start. In order to run a crowdfunding campaign similar to what somebody like Tile did, or Ringly, or some of the ones that you see that are phenomenally successful, that actually costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is not a free thing where magically your product just goes viral. Crowdfunding itself is not a story anymore. You're not going to get the kind of coverage that Pebble did when they were the first to break $1 million, because that's just not a story anymore. And so to that point, we look at crowdfunding as a way to vet consumer interest, to see if you've produced a product that people want. So it's a great signal for investors, and if you do blow it out of the water, you're going to have investors reaching out to you. The flip side is it often makes a lot of sense to try to raise an angel round before you go out and do that, because you're going to have to fund that crowdfunding raise. And also because one of the areas where people fall short on crowdfunding is they get it, they're successful, and then they don't have enough gunpowder to actually manufacture, so then they find themselves running out and scrambling to actually manufacture the product that they've promised. And that's a huge problem, because then you find yourself being one of those unfortunate campaigns where for the next 2 years you're going to have people sending you angry emails. So crowdfunding is good. It's something that, it's not like a magical money tree where you just kind of put your product on there and money falls into your lap. So it's really something that you have to think about in strategic terms, kind of over, it's basically your launch. When you're doing that, that's your launch. If it gets any press, it's great, and that's really your public launch and the kind of initial face of your brand. And if you botch it, on the flip side, you have to explain to people why that happened, why there was no interest.
Any thoughts from you on how Ludlow Ventures and your partners use AngelList or don't?
I'm a huge fan. We're actually investors in AngelList, and Naval was one of my earliest mentors. I think the world of him and the company. I think AngelList is a phenomenal way to fill out a round. I think that it's a marketing tool in itself. I've helped companies. Let's say if a company's raising $1 million, they get to 750, they kind of hit like a snag, and then they get featured on AngelList, and all of a sudden they've got tons of inbound interest again. Not only on the investor side, because there's a lot of people poking around AngelList who are consumers as well. So I think that if you have a strong core, and AngelList can be just this phenomenal layer on top of that.
I'm not sure if we can take questions from the audience. I can't see anything actually right now. Should we just keep going? Yeah. Okay. How about I think a lot of larger funds, because they're looking for ownership and they're looking to be early because certain companies end up taking off, they're moving downstream again a little bit. How should a founder think about taking a large check from a known institution? What are the benefits, challenges associated with that?
If the company does well out the gate, it's a wonderful marriage. If the company takes a check from a really top-tier later stage firm and that firm doesn't follow on to the next round, that's just an insanely negative signal, and it looks really bad for the company. That's it. If you have the access, it's generally a good thing.
So you're saying the signaling risk is real?
Yeah, the signaling risk is very, very real.
Yeah. Don't have time to add to that, yeah.
Okay, let's see. Final question to you.
Wait, I want to ask you a question.
Oh, yes,
because you
please.
invest a lot, a ton. Mm-hmm. In fact, I look at you're like kind of a little bit of a Yoda to me. So when I see it come across that like, oh, Samil invested in company X, I'm like, I'm going to invest in that company too then.
Yeah.
So what's the one thing? The question's asked so much. What's the one thing you look for in a founder? But I really want it to be unique. Answer it with something cool.
Yeah.
That they haven't heard yet.
I would say the thought process I go through is assuming that it's somebody, the base assumptions that I can work and communicate with this person and I trust them. I really try to think 18 to 24 months ahead, that if they say they're going to do 1, 2, and 3, and that actually happens, can I match them in the category they're in with an investor I personally know at a larger fund? And can I credibly introduce that founder to that larger investor in the future? And that every other decision point revolves around that path.
And when you're speaking with someone for the first time, how long does it take for you to say, like, okay, this conversation is going to go somewhere, or no way?
Well, a lot of it starts on email, so I will spend a lot of time trying to suss out how the person writes and communicates. But then if I meet somebody, usually I have a preconceived notion of wanting to lean in, so it's usually before we even meet.
So, and Renee, I'm just curious, for me, it's like 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's pretty fast. And then one other thing I just want to throw out there is I've also been really excited about a deal and then passed after feedback came back indicating that there was some sort of unscrupulous behavior or sketchiness or just red flags, or whenever you ask over an email, hey, what do you think of so and so, and you get the response back like, call me, That's
Bad news.
yeah.
Hey, well, thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully that was useful. Thank you, Renee. Thank you,
you.
JT.
Thank you.
And thank you.